Welcome to the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Today, I'm here with Rachel Rossitto, and she is a beautiful woman who I've admired since the day I met her back in 2013. We met in Ojai. We were at a retreat that we were co-creating together. It was a group of us. And Rachel had such a beautiful feminine way about her. And I remember that she was working with the rose at that time. And I thought her offering looked interesting, but I was on my journey. I then ended up in Italy and Dom and her, and then we found each other there again. And that was just such a beautiful reunion. And now I'm here in Pisac in the Sacred Valley of Peru, and I just finished a rose Dieta. And while in my Dieta, Rachel came to my awareness that I would love to, in her next group offering connected to the rose, learn from her and receive some of her gifts and magic around the rose. And so I thought, oh, and by the way, do you want to be on my podcast? And so I welcome you, Rachel, and I invite you to introduce yourself, share a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Nikki. It's such an honor to be here, and so beautiful that we've known each other for over a decade, and now to circle around again and to talk about the rose and, feel and allow her energy to move through us in this way is just such a beautiful blessing. So thank you for inviting me to be on your podcast. And it's so interesting, the rose. She really, my experience is she has a lot to say right now, and so there's a lot of women who are waking up and are feeling called to learn more about her and to develop a very intimate relationship with her. And with the rose, she kind of, we listen and we open and we create the conditions to receive her teachings, and we kind of court her, and then she courts us, and it becomes this beautiful dance of alliance and communion. And I am passionate about supporting women and connecting with the sacred feminine. And I love seeing women who feel nourished and alive and vibrant and in their purpose and giving their gifts from a place of deep connection to the sacred and connection to life force energy. And what's so beautiful about communing with the rose is she is representing, the plant queendom, the flower queendom, and has so much to teach us on a very practical level and also a very cosmic and energetic and celestial level as well. And the rose came to me when I was in my darkest hour, when I was in my late teens, early 20s. I hit this rock bottom where I really wasn't taking care of my body. I was struggling with depression, and I was kind of, she kind of came in right at the moment to remind me of love and the power of love, the power of self-love, the importance of divine union within and without, and how through that union we create that ripple of harmony, of peace, of kind of creating more health in the ecosystem within our own beings, and how that can ripple out in the world, in our communities. And it was interesting to kind of backtrack a little bit, because then someone was like, your last name is Rossitto. It's like Little Rose. I was like, oh, she's been there all along, and has this very mysterious way of weaving her teachings into the fabric of your life. And for me, I remember when I was 19, a boyfriend had gifted me the book, the Mary Magdalene manuscripts And I remember reading this book and was just crying and just felt this deep sense of remembrance and feeling that energy that like there's so much power and potency in the transmissions that are coming through. And it just awoke so much inside of me. And yeah, for the last 15 years, I've been supporting women. I nurture a online platform called Temple of the Rose, and it's really helping women to connect more with their hearts, more with the most powerful force in the universe, which is love, how to care for their wombs and their bodies. I'm also a birth doula, so I love supporting women and bringing their babies into the world and that process of communing with their sexuality and their sensuality and calling in love and partnership and creating a family and really the unification between the heart and the womb, and how for so many of us, especially on the spiritual path, have been severed, right here, and kind of have lost connection to the lower parts of our body, but really remembering that our sexuality is sacred, and especially when we unify our hearts and our sexuality, it's a very very powerful and potent force connecting with creation and life force and vitality. So I'm here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I tend a sacred space here with a sister of mine, and we call this space Casa Tarosa, which is the house of tea and rose. And I'm in very deep reverence and humility, always learning from the plants, specifically tea and rose.
So beautiful, so beautiful. And you touched on so many things. One, I do want to comment on your name. Because another sister I have on the podcast, Daniela Gill, I think you were meant to connect with her at some point. She does Akashic record readings. She also has done a rose dieta recently, and then I mentioned about you, and I was like, yeah, well, I do feel like it's definitely Rachel's dharma because her name is even Rossitto. And I do name readings, so absolutely, it's like you were born to be in communion, serve, share the rose. And I feel so much of her frequency in you, even from when I first met you. And I do really love to admire and share and applaud and celebrate how I do feel that you embody a lot of your teachings of the feminine and just a lot of the softness and the harmony that the rose brings. And I was even sharing on another interview recently how when I left my dieta, I really did feel like harmony was a big teaching that she was even like, if it, ask yourself before you say something, before you do something, is it going to create harmony? And if not, can you say something else or just don't say it? And it reminds me of when we're a little kid. It's like, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. And it's like these simple teachings, but it's like a return to the heart, a return to love. And I know for times in my spiritual path, I was so disciplined to the point of not creating harmony. It's like I had to eat organic, and then I would cause this havoc when I would go home to my family. And then I started saying, wait a minute, hold on. If I only see them 2 times a year, I think I can eat anything when I'm there with them. And just love my grandmother's gnocchi or my other grandmother's pollo sudao or whatever. And it doesn't matter where the chicken comes from. It's just harmony first, that love, that connection, that union first. And it's so simple, but I always feel that too. And I'm like, what really defines a spiritual person? And it's not how much yoga you can do or how organic you eat or any of those things. It's really the cultivation of love and harmony and connection and union in all moments of life. And I guess if you want to share more on how, let's say we can just let's say if someone doesn't go and do a dieta, which for people who don't know, it's where you restrict what you eat, and you can either do fasting or you have no salt, no meat, you eat very simply to really imbibe the frequency of any plant. And so when you work with rose, you would drink rose, and some people mix rose and cacao. And of course, you can share about dietas that you know as well. And so this is the one that I just did. And so you have no salt, and it's really about bringing that frequency of the plant into our bodies. And for me, it was a very purifying process as well. There were some sits that I had with cacao nibs, and I actually had a purge with her, like as if you would have an
Mm.
ayahuasca, which was like amazing to me, which I was so happy about because, of course, like my desires to purify and resonate with the frequency of divine love. So anything that is not in alignment with that, please clear and remove that. Happily, I cleanse and purge whatever is not.
Mm.
And I'm curious, like, let's say if someone doesn't have the space or the time or anything, what are some ways that you recommend that someone can introduce rose into their life, maybe in this like beginner way or a way to start to connect with the frequency, which is divine love, as we know?
Mm. So beautiful. Yes, that's a really great question. I want to just go back to something you were saying about harmony first that I thought was interesting and notable in one of what I experienced one of her teachings, which is this relationship to grace, and to truth. For me, when I feel into how she teaches, it's like how do we, and this is that correlates to what it means to be on a dieta. And like dieta is about purification, right? It's like cleaning the body, cleaning the field, so we may be an instrument first to listen and to receive, and then to offer from the purest place within ourselves that we possibly can. And so there's this, part of removing everything that is not love, like you said. And when we do that, it helps us to get clearer and our ability to listen and to respond. And so, we don't want to create harmony just to make everyone happy, but it's like we want to bring harmony forward because it's a gift to those that we meet, because it's soothing, because it's like sharing that harmony that is already within ourselves, and offering that forward, as a frequency of grace. And so sometimes it's like, well, how do you sit in your truth? If sometimes it's like time to be fierce and to be sharp and to be disciplined and to be, to use that thorn, because it is a sword. It has this medicine of discernment and sharpness and precision. And then there's also times to be soft, and there's times to, really work with the delicacy and the nuance of a moment. And so I find that the more clear we are, and the more that we're able to listen and really understand, like, what's being asked of this moment. Is it to use the sword? Is it the sword of truth? And how may I do that in a graceful way, in a skillful way, not just like chopping the heads off of whoever's in my wake, to make my point
Always.
because of my spiritual ego, versus like the softness, the pedal, the ways in which we can really like sit back in ourselves and to really be like, what is most important right now? Like, if I'm engaging with my mom or my grandmother, like, do I need to use my sword? Do I need to like make my point? Or can I just say, yeah, grandma, like like bring forth that sweetness, because there's nothing weak about sweetness and softness. It's actually one of the most powerful forces and tools that we can use, because it takes a lot of harnessing, it takes a lot of listening, it takes a lot of holding duality and totality, and to be able to kind of like really rest in our inner strength, and to kind of consciously choose our words wisely, and to be like, how can I sit in resonance of what is true, and also how may I bring forth the energy of love and grace and skillfulness, within that offering. So I really love what you share. And when and it's like also to say it's not always graceful, right? Like, it doesn't have to be graceful. We're definitely not always graceful, but I would say, may we strive for grace. It's a beautiful orientation. I'd love to be moving and walking in the direction of grace. May my life be more graceful. May my words be more graceful. May my death and my rage and my, like also have this sense of grace in it, which is like holding the consciousness within the cycle. It's like, if you're needing to use rage, may there be consciousness in it, and skillfully use the rage rather than like just it come out of like full. So yeah, and when I think about grace too, it's like the rose teaches us about cycles, right? Even in her death, there's grace. not all flowers, when they die, do they turn the beautiful, deeper, rich colors, and do they take on this unique shape. And so I find that her whole process from bud to blossom to death, her petals become offerings. And that is for me like, wow, what a life cycle, all the way to the very end. She's still abundantly giving for me the sweetest, deepest teachings, which is like how to make your life an offering, right? So this brings me to your question around how can a woman begin to commune more with the medicine of the rose? And I would say to make offerings, to have a practice where perhaps you build an altar in your home. And it can be a simple altar, right? It could have roses, it could have fire, water, incense, have the elements present. And maybe you build it on Venus Day, right? On Friday, it's the day of love and beauty and sensuality. It's the day of the goddess, Friday, Freya, and really anchor, like, I am going to build a relationship with the spirit of the rose. And so every week, maybe get some fresh flowers, some fresh roses. And then when the roses have turned, then you collect the roses and you put them in a bowl or in some kind of, chalice, something to hold. And then make offerings. So find a tree or go to your local body of water. It could be a river, a little waterfall, or the ocean, and pray with the roses. Like, bring those roses and ask, like, I long to have a deeper relationship with you. I am so curious about what you have to teach me. Help me to cultivate a relationship of reverence, of humility, of curiosity. Help me to, create this physical body, to create a vessel, an instrument so that I can receive you and receive your teachings in a good way. Because also it's important to remember that the rose has been present and with us across cultures for thousands and thousands of years. If you go to the ancient temples, in Europe, in Egypt, like, the rose is present. And so, even the lineage of Mary and the Magdalens, like, a lot of these teachings were shrouded for a reason. They're hidden for a reason. And even though now she's waking up and there's a lot to be said, the deepest teachings come in the innermost sanctum and the innermost realms of the heart. And so the more that we develop that personal relationship with her, the teachings wake up inside and they stay not hidden as in a place of fear, but just more protected. And that intimacy, that sacredness continues to grow and to blossom at a pace that is most true for you. And like, you can't rush the blossom, right? You can't just like take a course on the rose, or you can't do one Dieta and all of a sudden, like, it's like, it takes time, it takes nurturing, it takes care, it takes respect, and she may teach you through the realms of the bud and the bloom, and she also may teach you in the realms of the thorn. And it might mean that you might walk through some channels of your life where it gets really thorny, and you might get like shredded, and there's teachings in that too. So it's always important to be very respectful and to walk gently and to not grab. Like, you think about the rose, like, you can't just go grab a rose, you'll get pricked. You have to be respectful in relating to the sacred and touching her gently. And so I would say, just starting that relationship of listening, of making offerings, and being patient and leaning back and knowing that she'll come to you when she's ready, and when she does, she'll give you everything that you need and more. And be ready, because the medicine is strong. It's deep and it's strong. It's gentle, but it's strong medicine.
Yeah. So beautiful. I resonate with everything you were saying. And, I actually have created this commitment since the end of Dieta to drink her every day. And I even got these like tinctures of the ones that specifically grow here in the Sacred Valley to take. And I'll bring some dried petals with me as well, because it feels like that union and that connection, it needs to be cultivated. It's not this like one and done. It's like a process. It's a relationship that's curated and it's reciprocal and all the things that you said. And I want to talk a bit about the thorns as well as the Marys. And I remember when I got to my Dieta, I told her, I was like, I really need the thorns too. Can you just make sure I have thorns in in the tea that she was
Mm,
brewing? And she was like, oh yeah, I did put thorns. And it was like the first card I pulled as well. It was like the thorns, because that was another big teaching that she had for me, which was around boundaries and like
mm,
not people pleasing. You know, like the
mm,
harmony doesn't mean the people pleasing. And we exert our boundaries, or you know, there are times where people don't exert boundaries from that place of people pleasing, because like
mm,
truth is truth, regardless if it's, some people might not like that truth, but that's truth, right? And so that was part of the medicine, which was really like honoring what is your truth, creating those strong boundaries, regardless if it pleases people or not. And I
mm,
do, and I've always felt that
mm,
the rose, and I do energetic practices with roses because for me, they really represent graceful boundaries.
mm,
Because there's the beautiful rose, and she has her thorns to protect, but she still shines and she's beautiful and she's soft, and you want to smell her and you want to be near her and all the things. But if you grab her, she will prick you. So it's like one of those, she's really this beautiful metaphor and mirror for a graceful way to
mm,
embody boundaries.
mm.
And I've always loved that about her. And it's like I'm so excited to even more embody that. I don't know if you want to speak on graceful boundaries a bit more, and how you felt they've, even like particular examples of how you feel that they've really manifested in your life in a beautiful way when you did have to exert that sharp boundary, but it was like so well received because it was so graceful.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good teaching, I think, for so many of us, right? Especially those of us who are empathetic and who tend towards people pleasing, and and even that is a deep, there's a survival in that. It's like as women, we want to keep the peace. We're thinking about the family. We're thinking about the whole kind of constellation of people, the community. We want everyone to be happy because when everyone else is happy, then we're happy and we can rest. That's like the old kind of patterning. And, so that tendency to please or to overgive is really ingrained in our being. And so it doesn't mean that necessarily we're now overly selfish, right? And just like me, I don't care about anybody else. Like, it is always this dance between attuning to the other while also maintaining your own clear, energetic integrity. And so for me, what I find to be really helpful is this deepening in ourself. Like the more we know ourselves and we know what our needs are and we're able to meet our needs and we know what feels good and what doesn't, it's just this like beautiful self-knowing, right? And so then when a boundary comes, it's not like this sharp, you know boundary that has to be really hard. It's just like, okay, this is where I am. This is where you begin. This feels good. This doesn't feel good. And we can only really get to that point until we get to know ourselves more. And so I'm a huge fan of morning practice. I'm a huge fan of taking time in the morning, even if it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, or longer if you have it, but to sit with yourself, to meditate, to drink tea, to journal, and to really like know your inner landscape so that as you move about your day, you're really clear in what you are and what you need. Because as a woman, we have different cycles, right? When we're mooning, we have different needs than when we're ovulating. When we're traveling and we're moving around, we have different needs than when we're like home and we're chill and or different needs when we're working on a project versus when we're, in a lovership and we're in a dance with another person. It's like we're constantly changing, and that's the beauty of the feminine. But also, if we're not constantly tuning in and have that muscle of listening to the self, it's really hard to know where our boundaries are. And so once we have that relationship and that's sort of established in the muscle, then it's about communication, right? It's like we can have a boundary that's like sharp and it's like pushing someone away, or it can be clear and firm. So I like to think of boundaries as firm. clear and firm. It's just like, this is where I'm at. This is what I need. This is okay. This is what's not. And we can still give a boundary while still being in our hearts, still being loving. And so sometimes if you would establish a boundary, right, not everybody respects boundaries. So not only do we establish them, but we have to reaffirm them and reaffirm them and reaffirm them. And so I find that the more that I'm self-honoring, the more that I sit in my value and I know how important my energy is to me, the easier it is to know what is okay and what is not okay. And the way we learn that is obviously by having that boundary be overstepped. And we all know what that feels like. And it feels terrible, right? Like, so it's just, it's a cultivation of self-love, of self-respect, of self-honoring, and knowing that actually when we do that, we have healthy boundaries, we're more loving. We're able to really give from a place of abundance, of generosity, of true generosity, not wanting to be liked or wanting to have approval or all these other things ultimately come back to bite us. So these thorns, another way I like to think about it is, maybe put the thorn before the rose. Sometimes what happens is we can come off as being all sweet in this, and then someone crosses our boundary, and then we have the thorn, and they're like, and then show the boundary. It's like, how do you have that ring of thorns that already distinguishes where that boundary is, and then as we let people in, then there's more of that sweetness. It's always a balance, right? Because we also don't want to be super, super thorny and be totally unapproachable where people are terrified of you, So it's like how to hold that openness that, so you see a rose and she's beautiful and she has that beautiful scent and you want to lean in and you want to connect and you want to commune. Oh, wow, look, oh, there's a thorn. I should be careful. I should be mindful and be respectful. Oh, okay, I can get closer now that I'm mindful. I can get in there even more and have a deeper relationship with her. And one of the things that I always like to be reminded of with the rose is, if you go to a store nowadays, right, and you go and buy roses at the grocery market, oftentimes you'll see that she doesn't have thorns, and also she doesn't have a scent, right? So in essence, the ways that the rose, or you could say that essence, medicine, the power of the feminine, has lost its core essence, it's like we've lost that inner beauty. We've lost that wildness. The thorn is like the wildness, our fangs, our claws, like that, that sharpness. And then the scent, like a rose is beautiful, but her real medicine is in the fragrance, right? The way when you smell her and you're like, oh, it makes you want to breathe deep. It feels like almost like this jolt of like ecstasy, right? She's the highest frequency of any flower on this planet. So there is like power, potency in her scent. So I think as women, we're learning how to rewild. We're learning how to not be shameful of our thorns, but to own them and be responsible with them. And also to reignite that inner beauty, that scent that is like, you walk into a room and it's like felt before even seen, not getting too caught up in our appearance. Not that we can't honor our beauty and emphasize our natural beauty, but that can't be it. It's not just about being a beautiful rose. It's about the cultivation of the spiritual beauty, the inner beauty that emanates beyond the physical beauty.
Yeah,
And the other
beautiful.
thing to note about the rose is the roots. Her roots are strong. They're strong roots. So there's a deep grounding, in the earth that is necessary, I think, to hold and to walk with that kind of medicine.
Yeah, so beautiful. You touched on so many beautiful things and the beautiful practices and way to connect with ourselves. Then, and that just, I think everything is really about connection and union, like union with ourselves, union and connection with the rose, and then everything rippling out beyond that space. And her just being this beautiful teacher. And I find that nature's teachers kind of have this perfection to them because we know there's no such thing as perfection, but of course in nature's intelligence there's this sense of perfection, and I feel like she really emulates that, the rose. And when you were speaking on, like, as us women having kind of like that ring of thorns around, not too scary of course, I feel like as I've deepened into my feminine and as in my women's programs and that boundaries is always a module, because I think what prevents women from really wanting to embody their radiance and their light and all the things is they don't want, like, or so I've received the feedback, like they don't want the wrong person to get the wrong idea. They have been hurt before, so they kind of tend to shield in some way. And I know even for myself, like I grew up in New York City, where like your bitch face was the thing that protected you, that you got less cat calls and like all these random men wouldn't come up to you and start talking to you, because you have a place to go and like you need to get there. And if you stop to talk to every person that was trying to talk to you, it was like, and so much of it was like unlearning, de-armoring, knowing that I'm safe and that I can be this full, nourished, blossomed woman. And even on the search to the beloved and the journey to the beloved, I also know so many women are like, oh yeah, when I meet my beloved, then I'm going to be in my radiance and then I'm going to shine. But it's really like, how can he even see you if you're not shining now? And what I do feel helps is having that boundary and having it be energetic. And so I know, like, I work with rose visualizations and things like that. And yeah, maybe we can even get into something like this into the bonus, because we're coming to time now. But I do want you to share a bit more about where people can find you, where they can reach you, what offerings you might have that you feel you want to share. And of course, we'll include all of the ways to connect with Rachel in the comment section.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been doing these seasonal courses, which I really, really love. And I find that, what's so beautiful about the rose is that she embodies that totality. She embodies the full spectrum. And, she has the feminine and the masculine and the softness and the strength and the fierceness and the delicacy. There's so much inside of her. And so I find that when I attune to the rhythms of nature and learn from each season, from, bud to blossom to decay to seed, that really helps me start to understand my rhythms and the rhythms of nature and to commune more deeply with the rose. So I do have these seasonal courses, one in the winter called Yin, one in the spring called Unfurl. I also have a course called the Chalice that goes deeper into the lineage of Marys and the Magdalens and how to really commune in sisterhood with the spirit of the rose. And so my website is rachelrossitto.com. You can find me on Instagram too, Rachel Rossitto, Temple of the Rose. And I do offer one-on-one mentorship. A lot of women come to me and they're like, I really want to, come into my purpose more. I want to call in partnership. I'm going through a divorce. I want to deepen in my ability to embody, feminine energy. And so sometimes courses can be really powerful, group cohorts, and sometimes that deep laser one-on-one, like really tuning into refinement and specificity as we go deeper on our path can be really profound. And then yearly, I run a retreat in Greece, which is called the Beauty Way Retreat. And it's like a very deep in-person journey into all this, yumminess and the Venusian path and everything grows and, all that yummy juice. So yeah, if you're interested, definitely reach out and say hi and would love to serve you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here, Rachel. If you want more, we will be sharing more inside the bonus content. And Rachel is just such a beautiful person inside and outside. And I really have felt her as the embodiment of the rose over the years. And so she's definitely a beautiful resource. So go follow her and work with her in any way you feel called. And so with that, we send you so much love. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the ascension path with me and for doing this great work.